Good morning, everybody. We'll give it just a second before we get started. I see there's only 4 people here at the moment.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you guys enjoying this very cold November morning so far? You
I
guys,
just want it to look like this Christmas morning.
yep. This is a very, very early snow. I can't remember the last time we had one this early. I remember one year, it was the year one of those big hurricanes hit. I think it was like 2012. We had a one in October then, I remember. That was the earliest one I ever remember. Hopefully, the winter this year is not as bad as what it was last year. I know I had some classes in the spring semester for like a week or almost. We lost almost 2 weeks because it wouldn't stop snowing. Well, anyway, let's get to it. Start talking some Macbeth. So before we get rolling, let's just kind of go round table here. Well, we did some sonnets last week, but besides sonnets, what is your guys' experience with Shakespeare in your past? Um, Delana, you want to start us? What have you read from Shakespeare in the past, if anything?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but my nursing class reread something. I think it may have been Julius Caesar because of how he got stabbed, and then we analyzed all of the stabbings. I think that's the only thing that I've read, though.
That's fun though. That's a fun assignment.
Yeah, it was really cool how she had us do it.
Yeah, they all pretty much all the senators got together and kind of shanked them hundreds of times. Interesting, Nick. What's your experience with Shakespeare? You can always type in the chat if you don't have a mic.
I'm sorry. Whose name did you call?
Nick, we'll move to you, Mandy. What's your experience with Shakespeare?
Absolutely zero. Absolutely
This is
zero. I have never
this is
read
your first
anything
one.
from Shakespeare whatsoever. Of course, I graduated in 1998. So um, we read like Pilgrim's Progress, which probably doesn't even exist for reading now. And so I am an old college student, so I'm just now getting into some of this stuff, but I've not read anything.
Yeah, of all the things to read, Pilgrim's Progress over.
Yes, that's what I remember back then. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a very famous early novel. Um, it's got a lot of like Calvinist Christian roots to it. John Bunyan, I think, was the author of that. So yeah, it's interesting. What about you, Emily?
I've actually read Macbeth before, but that's really it that I've read by him.
Did you take Professor Botts? I know he teaches Macbeth.
No, I read it with a professor from Concord University when I didn't have a reading teacher in high school.
Which one was it by chance? I know them
I
all.
can't honestly. I can't remember. I had so basically it was like my freshman year, sophomore year, and my junior year. I had no reading teacher in high school, so they would just bring in these random people, and we would just read stuff with them, and then they'd leave. So I just remember reading Macbeth.
Interesting. It's probably Dr. Rieger. He has a beard. Probably that's probably who it was. Yeah, he's their Shakespeare expert over there. Allison, what about you? Experiences with Shakespeare before?
I've read Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and Julius Caesar.
Did you do Julius Caesar in high school?
Yeah, I did all three of those in high school.
Interesting. Yeah, so you're pretty well read. Benny. Again, Benny, you can type in the chat if you can't speak. Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, that one's usually in ninth grade English. That's when I read it. Was freshman English in high school. Last but not least, Kaylee, how have you read before?
I read Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet when I was in high school.
Yeah, so no one has read Hamlet before. That's what I was looking for there. Um, Interesting. Yeah, I alternate every semester in this class just to keep it fresh for myself. So I'm doing Macbeth this year. Last year I did Othello. Um, Hamlet, I've done a lot. So nobody's reading Hamlet these days. I'm probably going to have to move back to it because it's arguably his most important one. So, well, anyway, just to give you guys some introduction to William Shakespeare, the Bard. So we've kind of moved all the way up until the English Renaissance in the class. So we're in the 15. Well, we're actually in the early 1600s now. The first Macbeth was written in the first decade of the 1600s in England. So just to give you guys a little bit of history here, some history is kind of important for understanding Macbeth. Of course, this was the English Renaissance. England had, over the past 40 or 50 years before this thing was written, had kind of risen up in the world stage. You had Queen, of course, you guys know about King Henry VIII and his need to have a son, and he split from the Catholic Church and became the Anglican Church. You guys know all that. But basically, King Henry, when he died, his daughter Mary became queen, and Mary sought to try to restore the church back to the Catholic Church, and she killed a lot of Anglicans when she did so. the word Bloody Mary comes from her. Okay. She didn't last long, and eventually Henry's other daughter, Elizabeth, became the queen. And Elizabeth kind of ruled over England in one of its most prosperous ages ever. Um, the English defeated the Spanish in the Spanish Navy. Before that, the Spain was kind of the leading nation in Europe. England went to war with them and sunk a big part of their navy. And nationalism started spreading through England. You started seeing, especially, a lot of cultural output in Elizabeth's day. So, which took many forms, including the writing of poetry, like the sonnets that we started talking about the other day, as well as things like drama. So Shakespeare wasn't the only dramatist of his day. There were several of them. If you were taking me for a class just on British literature, we would probably read a few more of them. But in this time, London was a city growing up. Of course, in the Middle Ages, you had some cities, but none of them were very populated. It was during this time period where you especially started seeing a lot of people flocking to the cities. Yeah, London's. I would need to look up a chart to see how much it did blow up. But London in the Middle Ages was probably like the size of Charleston or so. Okay, like Charleston in West Virginia is our capital. It's a pretty big town, but it's not a metropolis or anything, right? It's kind of like what London in the Middle Ages would have looked like. But by the time we get to Shakespeare, we're starting to see almost like 1 million people or so congregating to the city and living there. So if you were going into the theater district in London in the early 1600s, like the theater was actually in the bad part of town. If you want to call it the bad part of town, some people would have thought it was. But this was the part of town where the riffraff hung out. So if you wanted to spend an average day in London, you could maybe do something like go to the theater. You could go to the brothel if you so chose. You might even do other things for entertainment, like go to a bear baiting match. Do you got any of you guys know what bear baiting is?
I've never heard of it before.
No animal lovers have heard of bear baiting. It was basically a form of entertainment where you starved. They got a captured bear. They starved it. They got a bunch of dogs, rabid dogs, and they starved them. And they would pretty much get together and watch it. They would get the starving bear and the starving dogs, a pack of starving dogs in a room together, and they would watch them fight to the death, pretty much. So, that's how many dogs could the bear take out before the dogs finally overpowered it. So, yeah, that was a form of entertainment that you could partake in in the Middle Ages if you so chose, or in the not the Middle Ages, in Shakespeare's Renaissance days if you so chose. So, are any of you animal lovers like what the hell? Like what? That's That's barbaric. What are you guys thinking that as I said that? And usually, yeah, usually whenever I'm in a classroom with people and I can see their faces and not just a blank screen, um, usually I see looks of horror on their face. But some more context to this. By the time Macbeth was written in like 1607. So this is one of his last tragic plays that he wrote. But by this time, Elizabeth has passed. Elizabeth did not leave an heir to the throne. She never got married. Many people tried. Like if you study her as a historical figure, she used her sexuality and stuff to for diplomacy purposes. Like she would make them think that she would marry them, and then she wouldn't. But she died leaving a hole. So basically, King James VI of Scotland became the new king. So this was just a few years before Macbeth. He became King James I of England. And when King James became king, he united the different kingdoms together. So before him, before him, there's some noise coming from your mic there, Mandy. There you go. Yeah, before King James, you had England, Scotland, Ireland, all these different sovereign nations. But James united them all together into what is now called the United Kingdom. Okay. Of course, Ireland went kicking and screaming. Like there's always been a lot of tension between Ireland and the mainland of England because of religion, as well as colonization too. They have not taken kindly to being colonized by the mainland. But you guys might know that name, King James the First, from another place. You guys know where I'm fishing for here? Where might have you have heard the name King James before?
Writing the Bible.
Yep, the Bible. Yeah, and LeBron too. Good one, Benny. Yeah, James commissioned what we now know of as the King James Bible. With once we talked a little bit before in the past about the difference between different versions of the Bible. Like that one has 66 books. The Catholic version has 73. But today, a lot of Protestant groups think the King James Version is still the authoritative one. So it reads in this 17th century English, kind of like Macbeth's written in. So it's not the most accessible version to read for a modern audience, but nonetheless, a lot of people still kind of think it's the definitive one in English. Shakespeare himself, there's speculation that he might have even contributed to translating parts of it. So Shakespeare was a middle class guy. Like during this time period in England, you're starting to see a growing middle class. We've kind of moved away from the rich people, the peasants, and the clergy. We're starting to see kind of a growing middle class. Shakespeare, when he grew up, went through what was called grammar school. And all this stuff's going to be relevant here, you'll see. But he went through grammar school. In grammar school, he learned stuff like a lot of stuff like what we're talking about in this class. He would go and study the classics, the classic literature from the. He learned Latin. He would go back and study all this old stuff written in Latin. He would learn math and arithmetic, rhetoric. He got what was called a classical education. So even in high school, he got a pretty strong education. And it gets probably more rigorous than what a high school education is now, if we're going to be honest. But this is where an interesting wrinkle comes up. There, over the past 30 or 40 years, there's been speculation that William Shakespeare actually wasn't a real guy. Okay. Yeah, this is called the Oxfordian theory, that Shakespeare wasn't a real guy. Why, might you ask? Well, in the 18th century, 1700s, a lot of speculation arose. Like these rich, like literary critics and stuff were pretty much like, how in the world could a guy who had no university education, he didn't go to Oxford or anything like that, right? How could a guy with no university education write stuff like Macbeth? If you think about it, that's a really classist way of looking at that. Like I take offense to that, right? I mean, I grew up in a middle class household. I made something of myself, but that's kind of what they argue. How could a middle class guy write some of the, not just one, but almost dozens of the most famous plays ever written in history? How could that be possible? Like, there's speculation that the Earl of Oxford might have been going by the pen name William Shakespeare. There's speculation that another dramatist, Christopher Marlowe, might have been. There's speculation about several different people. I think that whole line of inquiry is a bunch of BS. There's plenty of evidence to suggest he was a real person. These plays were performed. They were popular in their day. Shakespeare himself acted in some of his plays. There's written documents written by him. It's a stupid conspiracy theory that is taken more seriously than it should be. That's my take on it. Yeah, he passed in the I think it was 1617 when he passed. But when he passed, he actually left his wife as an inheritance, his second best bed. that was what he left her. You think to yourself, damn, right? Like, why the second best bed? Famously, you would leave your that was a pretty common gift to leave to your spouse, because you would leave your best one to your guests. So you back in the day, you would keep your best bed reserved for your guest room. So fun little nugget there. Yeah, all this lecture is coming into play, because especially the stuff about King James, because when Shakespeare wrote Macbeth, the play James had taken over, and the play in many ways is kind of a nod towards King James. Banquo, who we learn dies early on here. He dies in Act 3. He's Macbeth's friend at the beginning that the witches go up to. Banquo, you can all these plays like Macbeth were based on real historical figures. So this wasn't just a completely fictional story. He based it on a historical king of Scotland named Macbeth. But so James actually could trace his lineage all the way back to Banquo. So Macbeth kills Banquo in the play, but Banquo's son escapes when they kill Banquo. Of course, he would later go on to found that lineage that became the royal dynasty of King James. So there's King James actually went and saw this play because of that reason. You guys might have heard that the play is also called the Scottish play, and there's a bit of a history around it. This is a bit of a cursed play in some ways, because every time somebody tries to perform it, it's become tradition never to say the name of the play as you're performing it, because lots of bad luck happens to people when they say the name of the play when you're performing it. Go and Google it if you want later. There's a long history of unfortunate accidents that happen when you say the name of the play while you're trying to put a performance on. So this is a play about murder, right? Murder, political maneuvering, cutting throats to get where you want. So at its heart, that's what it's about. But there's also lots of other stuff. This play is really popular because of the witch characters, right? The witch character. This is an age when it comes to Christianity. Something else I should have mentioned a second ago. The Puritans were starting to take root in England in the time. So I told you guys before, the Puritans were the Calvinist Christians. Calvinists believed in this idea called predestination. And in predestination, it was all about God knows whether you're going to be saved or whether you're going to go to hell before you're even born. Well, you guys can probably see here how this idea about predestination kind of seeps into this play, because from the very first lines, these witches are prophesying that Macbeth will become king. He'll become the Thane first, and then he'll become the king. Before that moment, arguably, Macbeth has no ambition at all to become the king. But the witches predict the future. They can kind of see into the future somewhat. Whether whether or not they see into the future because they're just good guessers or because everything is predetermined by fate. Well, that's another question entirely. But the play is famous for these witch characters. We also got one of the most famous women characters in all of lit, really, and that is this character, Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth, the star of this play, arguably more so than Macbeth himself. So let's take a look at some passages. So I've got our Norton Critical Edition of the book here. Page 17. Act 1, Scene 5. So again, she's kind of the star of the show. She is especially famous as a character for her cruelty, right? Like you'll see how when you take a look at this famous. There's a couple of famous speeches she has early on in the play. Any of you guys want to do me a solid and unmute and take a stab at reading this speech from Macbeth, from Lady Macbeth to the class? I'm starting to lose my voice a little. I'm starting to get sick. So if any of you would do me a solid and give it a read, I would appreciate it. Anybody? Oh, good Lord, guys, you're being hard on me this morning. Well, let's take a look then. So going back to the last page, she's reading a report from her husband. Okay. She says, they met me in the day of success, and I've learned by the perfect report. They have more in them than mortal knowledge. When I burned in desire to question them further, they made themselves air, into which they vanished. She's reading about the witches. While I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives from the king who all held me, Thane of Cawdor, on which title before these weird sisters saluted me and referred me to the coming on of time with Hell King that shalt be. This have I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness, that thou mightst not lose the dues of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. Lay it to thy heart and farewell. Glamis thou art in Cawdor and shalt be when thou art promised. So here's the famous part. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou holily, wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. Thou'st have, great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do, that which should be undone. Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear and chastise with the valor of my tongue all that impedes me from the golden round. fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned with all. Line 27, that word DOTH. Oftentimes people will try to pronounce that doth. It's actually doth. It's the early modern English equivalent of the word does. Doth. She's pretty much saying here in the speech, right? Like she wants to kind of put aside the kindness, the natural kindness of the human heart. Like she wants to put that aside. She knows what's right and what's wrong. She has a conscience. Conscience becomes a big theme in this play. She has a conscience, but she's pretty much, and she also has an extra added layer of conscience, she says, in being a woman. But she's pretty much saying that line, do I fear thy nature, is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. So she's talking about the nurturing instinct of being a woman, right? Put that away. Ambition takes first priority. Couple of acts later, right before they murder the king, take a look at page 21. She's egging her husband on in this scene to go through with murder. She says, "What beast was it then that made you break the enterprise to me? When you durst do it, then you were a man, and to be more than that you would be so much more the man. Nor time nor place did in it here, and yet you would make both. They have made themselves, and that their fitness now does unmake you. I have given suck, and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed his brains out, had I so sworn to you have done to this." So that's another early passage where she kind of shows that she's being for real here. Right? Pluck all human emotion out of this. She says she would go so far as if she had a kid, if she was to get this power to have a kid, she says she would bash the brains on the sidewalk, right, to get what she wants. So so she's something else. Right? She's the one egging Macbeth on to follow through with these ambitions. She's a famous woman character, but she's a famous one for being infamously cruel. She's one of the cruelest characters in all of literature, I guess you could probably say. I've been talking enough. What did you guys, early on at least, what do you guys think of this character? Were you guys shocked when you read that speech at how cruel she is? Some of you guys have read the play before, so you probably have talked about this before. What about you, Emily? I know you got something to say there.
I think it's like just typical like medieval or whatever it is, like ruling, because in movies like some of the rulers are portrayed as like heartless and everything, and I just think it's like the typical like England like rulers and stuff that like to kill people for no reason. So
You're kind of saying it's a sign of the times
yeah.
the play was written in. It's interesting though that that's not coming from Macbeth. It's coming from his wife. Um, that's probably to add to what you said there, Emily. That's probably the biggest wrinkle here. This is coming from a woman, not a man. This is uh, this is one reason I think why it shocks people. Yeah, think about even things today like I don't know. I don't want to talk about throwing a wrinkle in. Think about stuff today like abortion. I'll use abortion as an example. Um, Most people who get them suffer with things like intense regret. I mean, a lot of people who do it aren't like out on the streets celebrating that they did it, right? But you have some people who get on like social media and stuff and start bragging about it. Like, oh yeah, I got my 10th one this morning. Um, when you see something like that, you're kind of reminded of something like Lady Macbeth. I think that's the kind of cruelty, I guess we can say, that we're looking at here. It's it's more shocking. Like I hate to bring gender and stuff into it, but it's relevant to talking about this character. For many of us, it's more shocking when we see stuff like that coming from a woman than a man. Um, I don't know. Do you guys think that I'm right about that, or do you feel like that's not fair to say? What do you guys think? I saw a comment here. Let's see.
I think sometimes you have the threats from a man and they're just proving like, hey, I've done this before. I'm not afraid to do it again. Sometimes when you see those comments from a woman, it's showing the depth of the situation a little bit more because it is maybe a little bit more uncharacteristic for her character.
Can you say that again, Mandy?
Yeah, I was saying like for a man's character, if they have a lot of that aggression in their character, you don't question it as much when you see that. And sometimes maybe they're even making that threat just to say, "Hey, I've done it before. I'll do it again." But it's a little bit more. You step back a little bit when you hear that coming from a woman.
Right. Yeah. This type of character. Um, I saw your comment too about my mic. I don't know what's going on with that. Um, let's see. Maybe I just need to stop mumbling. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, when it comes from a man doing something like this was actually a pretty common trope for the day. Like Shakespeare wrote another play called Richard III. Richard III pretty much has the same exact plot, except you don't have this coming from a woman in it. You have it coming from a man. I think Mandy's right. that it does get more. You're like you see a plot like this, and it comes from a woman. Right? It seems a little more. You pay attention a little more just because it's more unusual. So, yeah, as so far through the play, at least she doesn't seem to have much remorse for what she's done. But you guys will see as we keep burning through it. So you look at Act 4 and 5 for Wednesday. You guys will see that arguably changes. She can't have this like monstrous persona forever. It's just unnatural to be that way. Something else that I always like to spend some time on whenever I teach this play is the kind of comic moments. Like you get kind of one of the brilliant things about Shakespeare, you get so caught up in the high drama of what's going on with Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and all this stuff that he has lots of scenes where he'll break up the tension with some comic relief. Something that often happens when you teach something like Shakespeare. Here we've already started in this class already. You guys haven't been, besides a couple of you, none of you's been helping me out this morning. But a class like this, depending on how you teach it, oftentimes Shakespeare's got the impression that he's boring or something, right? Like that's an impression that a lot of people get. I think that kind of results because in high school teachers can't really go far with actually teaching the content of this stuff because if they do, like overly religious parents and stuff might complain. We don't have that problem in a college class. Shakespeare is a lot of fun. There's a lot of jokes, raunchy humor in this stuff. You take a look at page 29. We have, this is right after Macbeth, right after King Duncan is murdered. And they wash the blood off their hands and all this stuff. That's after this scene. You have this comic character called the Porter, and take a look at line 19 or so. Macduff says, "Was it so late, friend, ere you went to bed, that you do lie so late?" He says, "Faith, sir, we were carousing till the second cock, and drink, sir, is a great provoker of three things." This is what three things does drink especially provoke? "Marry, sir, nose painting, sleep, and urine. Lechery, sir, it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. Therefore, much drink may be said to be an equivocator with lechery. It makes him and it mars him. It sets him on and it takes him off. Persuades him and disheartens him. Makes him stand to and not stand to. In conclusion, equivocates him in a sleep, and giving him the lie leads him." He's kind of just talking about how everybody that night's drunk, like that's how Macbeth got away with the murder. He gets everybody so drunk they pass out, and that's when he kills the king in a sleep and then pins it on the guards. But the porter here is giving some fun dialogue. It says it's talking about like what does drink do to you. Well, think about it. Think about how many people have probably been born over the course of the centuries because of alcohol, right? He's pretty much saying here alcohol puts you in the mood, but at the same time, it makes you want to do it. But at the same time, it's hard. It makes it more difficult to perform the deed if you are super drunk. He says. I like that line. It makes them and it mars them, sets them on and it takes them off. It persuades them and disheartens them. It makes them stand to and not stand to. As their little note at the bottom says, stand to. He's talking about an erection, right? He's saying alcohol makes you want to get there, but then it makes you go soft again. So he's making Shakespeare does that a lot in his plays, right? He makes these little jokes. This isn't the type of thing that you would talk about in a high school English class. But if we don't mention it, you're not getting the real Shakespeare here, right? Shakespeare, he has all these universal themes of that have lasted through the ages, but he can make a limp dick joke at the same time in the play too. So I don't know if you guys, as you were reading, kind of caught that. Like, hey, that's actually kind of funny. But he does that in his plays. He breaks up especially these tragic plays. He breaks up this high drama for these kind of light, laughable moments as you go through. Of course, there's some other fun stuff going on in that scene. The porter is talking about the noise that's being made when the murder is happening. He thinks it's somebody loudly knocking. But it doesn't seem like a scene that one would spend time talking about in class. But I wanted to point it out to you just because that is the real Shakespeare. That's the man had a really interesting sense of humor, I think. If you would mention that in a high school class, somebody would throw a fit about it, I'm sure. But such is the benefit of being in a college class. Well, so to sum up our plot, the murder happens. Then in Act 3, Macbeth orders the murder of Banquo. Remember, I told you guys Banquo is King James's ancestor. We have that, and then we have that scene pretty close to the end when Banquo's ghost, Macbeth, starts hallucinating and sees Banquo's ghost at this dinner party he's hosting. So Macbeth's kind of freaking out, having some schizophrenic visions of Banquo, while all these other guests are sitting around thinking, what the heck? So that's kind of how we end for today. So we also have Macduff. Macduff is King Duncan's son. Right after King Duncan's murder, Macduff kind of is smart and takes out for the hills. He knows that something's weird, something's up. So Macduff, during the course of what we've been reading so far, goes outside the kingdom, goes back to England, starts raising an army. Right? Like he's ready to take Macbeth out. So the last half of the play is kind of centered on Macbeth. Macbeth got his power. He's at the height of his power right now. we're getting ready to see the downfall as well. So things are getting ready to take a bad turn for them. I guess you guys will have to come back on Friday and see what happens, or Wednesday and see what happens. So I'm gonna put up a quiz after today to test your comprehension, because I have the gut feeling that not many of you did the reading for today. I have a gut feeling about that. So I'm gonna put it up. Make sure that you guys are staying on the same page. Okay. So Act 4 and 5 for Wednesday. So we'll see y'all then.
You guys have a good day.
See you, Mandy. Oops.